Have you ever questioned your own skills, not recognise your own accomplishments and achievements? Feel that one day people are going to discover that in reality you are a fraud, despite the evidence to the contrary. If that is you, if you recognise that, if you've experienced that, then folks, you have what people would commonly call imposter syndrome. In this video, I'm going to go through the idea of what imposter syndrome is, what causes it, and what we can do to reduce and minimise that experience. Hi folks, welcome to another weekly episode on I Hate Numbers. My name is Mahmood, I'm an accountant, I'm an educator and proud author of the book I Hate Numbers. The purpose of my channel, the purpose of all my content generation is to help you and your business increase your financial awareness, win more battles than you lose for the battle that goes on between your ears, help you and your business make more money, save tax and save time. What a wonderful combination. Let's crack on with the broadcast. The idea behind imposter syndrome is that despite the evidence to the contrary, we as individuals don't validate, don't recognise our own sense of achievements, and we feel effectively that we're there under fraudulent purpose. Those thoughts that go through our minds that, what we do is so easy that anybody can do that, despite the level of qualifications, the experience, and what we do in our businesses and in our work life. Praise is given to us, which we dismiss, we don't take that on board. We think people are being polite, we think people are being complimentary for a complimentary sake, and we don't internalise and take that on board. We may be perfectionists, and we don't want to deliver a project, a piece of work, unless it's absolutely perfect. The consequence of all of this is it puts undue pressure, creates anxiety, and it's not good for you, and it's not good for your business. You may be employing staff, and you may be creating that environment where your staff feel similarly as imposters. You're not alone, folks. Emma Thompson, Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey are three high-profile individuals who have said at some point they've experienced imposter syndrome. Joining those ranks are Michelle Pfeiffer and Michelle Obama. So you are an esteemed company, and imposterism affects 70% of individuals at some point in their life. That's an incredible amount of talent that doesn't get realised, doesn't get unleashed in the world because of that thought process going through our mind. What are the causes behind that? Well, the reasons behind that are quite complex, and in an earlier study back in 1978, when the condition was first formally given a name, it was a survey done amongst 100 very highly accomplished academics and professionals, and despite their track records, despite their experiences, despite the evidence, they felt that what they did, anybody could do. They didn't actually value their own achievements. They felt like frauds. They felt that actually they weren't deserving of any credibility or any praise. It was initially thought that imposterism only applied to women. Subsequent research has actually found that it's equally spread between men and women. Women may focus more on the performance aspects, and men tend to look in terms of how people view them as success or otherwise. In terms of, if we dive deeper, our social backgrounds, our ethnicity, the backgrounds that we come from, the families that we've grown up, all contribute to those feelings of imposter. Have you ever been in that situation in your workplace, in business, where you feel out of place? People you see around you aren't a natural fit for you. You don't identify. Well, that also contributes. And a lot of the literature that is published on imposterism tends to focus on fixing ourselves, fixing the individual, as opposed to fixing the environment. For me, it's in this situation that if you want to resolve and minimize imposterism and unleash the talent in your own self and your business, then you need to look at it as a holistic approach. Imposterism isn't always necessarily a bad thing. It's a recognition that when we do things outside of our comfort zone, that's a recognition, that we should be doing things outside of our comfort zone, but it means that somebody has recognized that we have those skills, that aptitude, that ability to deliver what they want. So if you're in business and you are getting a new, bigger clients, if you're being given opportunity to do better work, perhaps doing speaking programs, what that means is somebody sees something in you that you may not see in yourself. What is it we can do to try and fix and resolve imposterism? Some of the common attributes behind imposterism is that idea of a fear of failure, the idea that we've got to be perfect in what we do, deliver perfectionism, and not actually recognizing our own sense of achievement. So some things that can be done, if we look in terms of ourselves, effectively having some way that we can actually validate and recognize our own accomplishment and our own achievement. One route down to get there is by mentoring others, supporting others, and that reinforces your expertise. Volunteering is a fantastic fantastic way of doing that. Sharing your expertise with the hundreds of thousands of voluntary organisations and charities that need your skills and expertise is a great way to validate and reinforce, and for you to internalise your sense of accomplishment. When we look at the idea of failure, failure to many people is seen as a negative aspect. In terms of failure, we again have esteemed companies. Walt Disney, Oprah Winfrey are two high-profile individuals who've experienced failure in their lives. They were both sacked from their respective jobs. Look at them now. And failure is just a guide, a step forward to your future success. Look at failure as a learning opportunity. If you can learn from that, if you can discover from that and move on, that's a great thing to do. So don't look at failure and not succeeding as devastating in its own right. Reframe yourself in terms of perfection. Your perfectionism may be because you feel you have to try much harder. You may have come from a social background, your ethnicity may be such, or maybe your cultural environment is such that you feel you've got to try that much harder. For myself, I come from a family of 9 with not much money or food on the table, and I've always felt that I've got to try much harder to prove myself. When you've got family expectations, when you've got workplace expectations that put you in that situation, feel you've got to try that much harder, it's very difficult to relax into it, and the validation that you get from others may not be there to experience, and you may not take that on board. If we look at the idea of perfectionism, it's about trying to reframe that framework, and it's not actually about getting things perfect. That in itself puts additional pressures on yourself. Getting it just right, getting it sufficient so it's good enough for your customer, good enough for the client, good enough whoever wants that piece of work from you should be sufficient. So dampen down your own perhaps unrealistic expectations and adapt them more. Look at planning. So when instead of reacting to situations, look in terms of marking those milestones and make a note of what you've accomplished in your day, in your week, and use that as a reference point. Folks, it's really critical that we get a grip with imposterism. Don't feel bad if you find yourself in that situation. It's a situation that affects the vast majority of people around the world, 70% according to studies. That's a whole lot of numbers. We need to try and adjust to that. We need to try and accommodate that. We need to try and deal with that if we're going to be moving forward in our business and in our life. I hope you found this useful, folks. If you have, I'd love to hear your comments and your feedback. What do you think? Have you experienced imposterism? If so, I'd love to hear. If you found this video useful, I'd love it if you could give it a thumbs up. I'd love it if you could share it with those who you feel will benefit. And until next week, folks, stay safe, stay sanguine.